This meeting is being recorded.
She always says that. Reminds me of my wife. Shabbat Shalom, Baruch Hashem.
Shabbat Shalom.
Now, we
Shabbat
have to
shalom.
turn to Bamidbar, to chapter 26. I take that back. Forgive me. Forgive me, please. We have, before we go to Bamidbar, we got to go back to Vayikra, chapter 26. Forgive me for the mistake. I don't know if I've hit 100 yet today, but I'm probably well on the way in my mistakes.
What reference was that, Rabbi?
Vayikra is Leviticus.
Leviticus. Okay.
Yes. Chapter 26.
6.
Leviticus 26.
Do you need your lights on over there?
Leviticus 26.
The disciplines. Everybody with me?
Did you sound Leviticus for those that may not know?
Yes. Starting in verse 2, you shall observe my Shabbats and fear my sanctuary. I am Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh. Now, at the time this was written, what sanctuary are we talking about?
Mishkan.
Yes, the Mishkan and the Ohel.
Right.
What's the difference between the Mishkan and the Ohel? Anybody know?
The Ohel is the entrance to the Mishkan.
You are right. Now make it correct. The Ohel actually is tent of meeting, but it's based on the entrance there being the tent of meeting.
Okay.
So what's the Mishkan?
The whole building.
The whole building
And
and
what
the
do we refer
courtyard.
all the way to that set apart place where the ark is? Mishkan is a tabernacle. Mishkan being tabernacle, there's a point there for his presence through his name being able to abide with us and be with us, tabernacling with us, which is where that phrase came from. There is not a real complete translation, and so tabernacling or being a tabernacle with us is a rough paraphrase being adapted into other languages. Now, in verse 3, it starts off, if you follow my statutes and you observe my commandments and fulfill them, so there's a difference between following and observing. I will grant your rains in their season, the land will give its produce, and the tree of the field will give you its fruit. Threshing will overtake the grape harvest will overtake the sowing season. There will be such abundance. You will eat your bread to satisfaction and live securely in your land. I will grant peace in the land, and you will go to sleep without anxiety. I will banish wild animals from the land, and no sword will pass through your land, meaning enemies. You will chase your enemies, and they will fall before you by the sword. 5 of you will chase 100, and 100 of you will chase 10,000. Your enemies will fall before you by the sword. The sword has a double meaning. Does anybody know that double meaning?
It can be used for battle, and it's used for the word.
The word is correct. Okay. And this is how it's used in Ephesians chapter 6. Now, do you know the second purpose of talking about the sword here?
You can use it for battle.
Okay, what is that battle?
Fight your enemies.
Okay, I can't argue that point. What makes somebody your enemy? I'll play for a moment.
Um,
They're in opposition to you.
That is incorrect. Your enemies are those that the Most High has not revealed them to, and those the Most High does not accept, and those who would persecute you based on the word of the Most High and His Torah.
Mm.
And so, whatever technique that they're using, whatever methodology, whatever mechanism there is in place for that, if it's violence, if it's courts, if it's lawyers, if it's politics, if it's coercion, if it's conspiracy, backbiting, gossiping, whatever it is, those are the tools that they're using for that. Now, hold on just a moment.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
Bye, shalom.
For what? Okay. Now, this first part from verse 3 through verse 13. Is him giving us methodology in place for what we would desire from him. Remember, everybody who first received Torah, they are in the house of Yaakov. And it's all transactional based on Yaakov's relationship with the Most High. In case you don't remember, even with the Most High speaking to him because of the relationship with his father and grandfather, the Most High said to him, I will be with you. And so the first thing that Yaakov responds with is, well, I'll tell you what, you go with me, take care of me, make sure I got food to eat, clothes to wear. And in 20 years, when I come back here with you, we'll talk about it then. So even the Most High, even though he has said, I will be with you, he said, let's see how that works out. Even whenever he was coming back, the Most High says, you don't have to worry about this. I got this. He still separated his camp and sent part of them ahead of him. And he said, well, even if I lose part of them, I still got the other ones. So he was not really trusting in what the Most High told him. And that's all in transactionalism. So when this is first presented, it's presented as though people are in the house of Yaakov. When we study it from the house of Israel as a perspective, we have to study it differently. And if we study it from the perspective of the kingdom, we have yet to study it differently, and there's a lot more that yields out from that. But for the moment, for the benefit of anybody and everybody being in the house of Yaakov, whomever might listen to this, from verse 14 on, it starts off, if you do not listen to me and do not fulfill all these commandments, if you reject my statutes, and if your soul despises my laws by not fulfilling all my commandments, and you break my covenant, I too will do this to you. Now there's a long list there. Okay, a very long list that shows just how stubborn and resistant we can be. Now, I'm going to tell you this. These are also nicknamed a lot of times the disciplines. Because he's not getting rid of us. Just because we're breaking the covenant, it doesn't mean that he's going to get rid of us, and I can show that to you here shortly. Okay?
Right.
But if you can remember this area, then, and you see what somebody's going through in their life, and you make a list of everything that he'll do, okay, when it starts off, okay, I will direct against you panic. Panic is like anxiety, okay? That's where anxiety attacks come from. That's where doubt comes from, the panic. And then consumption, it's a fever. What do we know consumption has today? Tuberculosis. Okay? And fever. So he separates tuberculosis from the different fevers. This is only the first step. And the consumption of fever will darken your eyes and anguish your soul. So it's going to make you depressed, make you lose hope. And that's just in the beginning. That'll increase your doubt. Well, he might be there for you, but he's not for me. That might be happening in your life, but it's not happening in my life. Okay? This is just the beginning. You will sow your seed in vain, for your enemies will consume it. I will direct my face against you. and you will suffer a heavy defeat before your enemies. Your foes, difference between enemies and foes, will subdue you, and you will flee with no one pursuing you. And if with these you do not listen to me, I will continue to chastise you sevenfold for your transgressions. 7 times. This sevening is extremely important because part of the way that we have our relationship with Him is we're supposed to seven things toward Him. We haven't gotten fully into that study yet. Okay? I will break the pride of your strength, your confidence in yourself, your resources you have within yourself, clarity of mind, strong heart. We can get through this. He will break that attitude. Okay? I will make your heavens, the sky above you, like iron, and your land will be like copper. Look what the land of Israel was like for centuries while we were in exile. Nobody made use of the land for centuries. And it continues, and it continues, and it continues. In verse 21, if you follow me indifferently and you do not desire to listen to me, I will increase infliction on you sevenfold, the sevens again, according to your transgressions. I will release the beasts of the field on you, and it will bereave you of your children. It won't eat you, they'll eat your children. Cut off your livestock, reduce you, your roads will be desolate. And if through these you are not chastised by me, and you go with me indifferently, I too will go with you indifferently. Means you're going to be a lot slower at answering prayer and treat our praise and offerings with a lot of indifference. This goes continually. If you make a list of these, you will see just what people can go through. And if you make a list of these and you look around you what people are going through even today and what people have been going through for the last 80 years in economies all over the world, you're going to get a better idea of things. It won't be so abstract and foreign. If you don't know where the next dollar's coming from, if you don't know where the next meal's coming from, if you don't know if you can have your house payment on time or your rent on time, if you don't have enough money to get your groceries, if your crop is not giving you enough of a harvest to make it to the next one, all of these things are going to produce that anxiety, that panic, that depression, that doubt, and all the things that are there. Okay? And yet still, and this is all because we don't turn to Him. We choose not to listen to Him except on our terms. This is all concerning transactionalism. So I need to make sure that you understand this area. Okay? Now, if you'll turn with me here in Leviticus, Vayikra, and you'll go all the way to verse 44. Well, let me back it up a tiny bit here. In verse 40, they will confess their iniquity and their ancestors' iniquity for the betrayal with which they betrayed me. So disobedience is also viewed as what? Resistance to Him is also viewed as what? Betrayal. Adultery. Spiritual adultery. To the betrayal with which they betrayed me, and also that they followed me indifferently. I too, I will treat them indifferently, and I will bring them into their enemy's land. That's exile. Or perhaps their uncircumcised, stubborn heart will become humbled, and they will gain appeasement for their iniquities. And in 42, then I will remember. Remember in Hebrew, the word remember means to speak on behalf of. I will remember my covenant with Yaakov, even my covenant with Yitzchak, and even my covenant with Abraham. I will remember. I will speak on behalf of it. And I will remember the land. I will speak on behalf of the land. In other words, he'll bring it back. The land will not be forsaken by them and appease its Shabbat years while it is desolate from them. They will gain appeasement from their iniquities in reprisal and in retribution for them having rejected my judgments and because their soul despised my statutes. And in verse 44, we got to look at it closely. But even so, while they are in their enemy's land, I will not reject them. I will not loathe them to exterminate them, to break my covenant with them, for I am Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, their Elohim. So he's not going to fully exterminate us. And here he gives us a premise for how he would break his covenant if he did. He would have to fully exterminate us and eliminate us for him to break his covenant with us. So those that believe that the covenant with him was broken, we might have been disobedient to it, but he did not abandon the covenant. He did not break the covenant he made with us. I will remember for their sakes the merit of the forefathers' covenant, whom I brought out from the land of Egypt in the sight of the nations to be their Elohim. I am Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh. These are the statutes, the judicial decisions, the teachings that Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh set between himself and the sons of Israel on Mount Sinai through Moshe. So we really need to have an understanding that he's presented the premise here of what it would take for him to break covenant with us. For him to break covenant with us, he would have to exterminate us so that in turn, there would be nobody to keep covenant with. He's saying that's what it would take for him to break covenant with us, for there to be nobody left to keep covenant with him. Now, we need to go to Bamidbar in chapter 3.
What book is that?
Numbers.
Numbers, I'm sorry, John.
Oh, chapter 3, Midbar, okay.
Now, if somebody will read for me, we're in chapter 3, verses 5 through 10.
The Lord said to Moses, bring the tribe of Levi and present them to Aaron. Wait a minute.
Aharon,
Chapter 5 through 13, you say? Let me start again.
chapter 3, 5 through 10.
Adonai said to Moshe, summon the tribe of Levi and assign them to Aharon the Cohen so that they can help him. They are to carry out his duties and the duties of the whole community before the tent of meeting and performing the service of the tabernacle. They are to be in charge of all the furnishings of the tent of meeting and to carry out all the duties of the people of Israel connected with the service of the tabernacle. Assign the Levim to Aharon and his sons. Their one responsibility in regard to the people of Israel is to serve him. You are to appoint Aharon and his sons to carry out the duties of Kohanim. Anyone else who involves himself is to be put to death. Adonai said to Moshe, I have taken the Levim from among the people of Israel in lieu of every firstborn male that is first from the womb among the...
Only the first 10, sir.
Oh, okay.
Now, so you can see just from here how we were discussing earlier set apartness. Now, what we were just talking about with the disciplines, okay, in Leviticus is that shows also how he can remove his set apartness from us. Even though we can gain a set apartness, we can gain a certain measure or degree of Kodesh. He can also remove it. Because he will not put his own Kodesh through those things along with us. So we would have to depart from being Kodesh in order for us to go through those things because of our own willful rebellion and restraint against him. So when we talk about repentance, when we talk about to return shuv or teshuva and coming back with regret and remorse and seeking atonement and forgiveness, guess what we're also coming back to? That degree of Kodesh, that set apartness that we left behind. It can be returned to us. We can actually feel it. It's not ceremonial. It's not moral. It is spiritual. Everybody with me thus far? Now, let's go to chapter 3, verse 40. Somebody please read verse 40.
Hashem said to Moshe, count every firstborn male of the children of Israel from 1 month of age and up, and take a census of their names.
Boy, that was awfully quick. Okay. Now, he sets up a premise here. Count them. He doesn't use this count very often. Okay. But here, he had them count all the sons of Israel, firstborn males. He didn't say just whenever they were a baby. He said count all the firstborn males. Okay. From 1 month old and above. So I just had to correct myself. Okay. And in verse 41, he says we're going to take the levy and let them replace that. And with the levy animals, replace the levy animals. And then he says it again in verse 44 and 45. Take the levy in place of every firstborn among the sons of Israel, and the animals of the levy in lieu of their animals, and the levy will be mine. So if he's taken the levy, the tribe, the men, to be his own, he's got to give them something to signify that. What would that immediately be? That Kodesh, that set apartness, to the degree that they need to have to belong to him. What I'm giving you an example of is not just the tribe of Levi, but I'm letting you see we have a lot of different examples in Scripture where the Most High will give us a degree of Kodesh, a degree of set apartness for his purposes to be fulfilled. And if we continue beyond then, we remain with that Kodesh, that set apartness, and it continues increasing. Okay? And then, of course, we want to look at chapter 26 again in Midbar. That's Numbers. In chapter 26, they begin a count again. Now, if you read in all the way into verse I apologize. I just made a crucial mistake. We can't do that study right now. I got to take you someplace else. So forgive me for that error in preparation. I've just been corrected. So now we will have to come back to today's where did that go? Oh, very interesting. Well, you can take everything I know about computers and put it in a thimble and still have room for the multiverse. Now, when we study in Devarim, in Deuteronomy, an area that everybody likes this area a lot, okay? But an area that we've got to cover as a part of the parashot today, okay? Has to be golly gee, and I worked on that this morning thinking that was going to be, oh yeah, we got to go to Devarim, Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 11 through 28. Yeah, 12, verse 11, starting off with. He's talking about Shavuot here in the place that the Most High chooses for us. Okay, so if we take a really good look at this, it has to be in verse 11, the place where Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, your Elohim, chooses to establish his name there. That is where you shall bring all that I command you, your burnt offerings, your tithes, your gift offerings, and all your choice vows that you vow to Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh. You shall rejoice before Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, your Elohim, you, your sons, your daughters, your servants, your maidservants, is your slaves, and the Levy who is within your town's gates. That's the Kohen, because he has no portion or inheritance with you. Most of what this week's parashot is showing us is by example and by narrative is different degrees of Kodesh, different degrees of set apartness, and how we have to regard that. For him even saying, for Shavuot, we have to go to the place where he chooses for us. That is what his set apartness is going to be for that Shavuot. Most Orthodox people, most Jews today read this, that it has to be at the temple or the temple area in Jerusalem, because that's where he said his name would live forever. Okay. But he also chooses a place for us to be because he can put his name on us. He can choose to put his name where he wants it for us to be. It is not conclusive, it is inclusive. And so, all through this parashot, if you'll begin to understand this process of Kodesh, Kadosh, and Kodash, you'll be able to see how in reality he's talking about all the different instances where being set apart, being Kodesh, is an imperative, it's a requirement for us to be able to be Torah observant, to be obedient to these things, and to be where and when he wants us to be for these things to be able to take place and for us to do his bidding and what he requires. But it can't happen without his set apartness. It can't happen without a certain level of Kodesh. And so this brings us right back around here. Now, any questions thus far? The more that you have a better understanding of Kodesh, set apartness, the more this is going to open up to you and you'll be able to see it in more and more places that we study. Because anytime the Most High talks to Moshe, it is through their set apartness that is there between them. For him to speak to Moshe face to face, there's got to be set apartness there. Moshe's got to be set apart to a degree. He's got to be Kodesh. That's the reason when he turns to talk to the people, he's got that light emanating from him, from his head. That's the set apartness of the Most High. But he doesn't give him too much so that it doesn't incinerate him. That's the reason he said, at the base of the mountain, they can't touch the base of the mountain because they'll die. That's the set apartness that he's placed there for that event to take place. Okay? He says of the offering system, this one offering is so set apart that anybody who touches it becomes that set apart along with the offering. Okay? So, we have any questions thus far? No questions. That's been a better lesson so far than I thought. No questions. Okay. Michael, it's 3:30 already. When do you want to take that break?
Let's do it right now.
All right, sir. It's all yours.
Okay, we'll meet back here in about an hour, guys. Enjoy your break.
Baruch Hashem. Shabbat Shalom.
This meeting is being recorded.
Yeah, she does always say that. Shabbat Shalom, Baruch Hashem.
Shabbat Shalom. Baruch Hashem. Yahweh.
There's a lot of different words we can use for the set apartness of the Most High and His Spirit. Level, degree, gradient. It depends on the vocabulary you may be used to more than anything else, I think. Because all we're really trying to describe is how close he can get us to him with him justifying us so that he keeps us safe without the set apartness destroying us. Now you saw the response to all of our people to Moshe coming down off the mountain the first time. The Most High really gave another portion, and that set apartness was right there, shining out from him. Nobody wanted to be close to him. Can you imagine having so much set apartness from him that they can't even see you? All they can see is his set apartness. All they can do is see him in some measure. I used to ask the Most High to give me so much of him that they couldn't see me anymore. All they could see was him. It gets really interesting. But in terms of what you were describing, Michael, When we turn to him moment by moment, it's not the set apartness that gets our attention so much because we're with it. And it kind of dulls the senses after a while until somebody else brings it to our attention again. Okay? It's like you look at yourself every day in the mirror. So seeing your face and seeing your identity that's established in the mirror, after a while, it becomes no surprise to you. You don't expect anything different. Yeah, that's me. And it's no longer a moment of inquiry. A lot of times it's unfortunate, but people start feeling the same way about his set apartness. And the way the Most High generally offsets that is the way that he works is different fruits of the spirits and their combinations through us to make each moment whole and of substance as it plays out before him. We might need an extra measure of peace, shalom, in a situation we didn't expect. We might need peace and joy with a family member that is not in agreement with us. We might need his love, his peace, and his mercy, and his kindness to deal with a situation or a person or a group of people. Whatever combination he brings forth or whatever sequence he puts it in, it is going to be fitting for the moment. And it can change as needed moment to moment. And the thing is, as it works through us and it's revealed through us, we see it about the same time everybody else sees it. We feel it about the same time everybody else feels it. And so we grow with the way it's revealed in those moments because of the way it's received by the other person, the way we receive it. Because as it works through us, we experience it, and as it works through us, the others experience it. We just have to make sure we don't attempt to restrain it because we know better for the moment. Can there be too much love through us from the Most High? Can there be too much joying through us from the Most High? Okay? When we attempt to control or we attempt to direct at any given moment, we're starting to make decisions that we should not make. Those choices are not ours to make. They are the choices of the Most High. Let me give you, for example, using myself as a teaching point. John, can I talk about you for a second?
Okay.
When we first met John and his wife in the parking lot, coming from a medical appointment in a medical building, she wasn't feeling too good, and I was trying to get her home. At the same time, when I looked both of them in the face and in the eye, the Most High said, stop, be still, give them this moment. And I went, well, she's tired and be still. Yes, sir. And the conversation that ensued was one that impacted all of us. Okay. And John was interested enough to take the contact information and eventually get a hold of us. And here he is with us, with his wife, Jordy, whenever she can. I use myself as a teaching point here because when we came out of the building, I was all for getting her home, getting her attended to, getting her rested, and so she could be okay. And the Most High said, be still. He had to tell me 2 or 3 times because of my concern for her. So I use myself here to let you see that sometimes when we're thinking that, well, this is the right thing to do, this is what I'm supposed to do, he's letting us know completely the right thing to do is to hear his voice and follow it, regardless of how much we think we're already doing the right thing. That's not to chastise anybody. That's not to correct anybody. It's not to be critical of anybody. That's the reason I choose to use myself as a teaching point here rather than anybody else. I was teaching at a home study group back in 1999, 2000, 2001, and there were about 12, 14 couples there. Some had kids, some didn't. And one fellow got upset because of another fellow's misunderstanding in a lesson, and he was up in arms about it. And he was just really wanting to defend the Torah and what he felt was the right thing to learn from it. And so the Most High had me call out his name 2 or 3 times. And he turned and he looked at me with an old war face and he goes, "What?" I said, "I don't know what, but I'm asking to get your attention so that you might be able to know what yourself." I said, "You're so beside yourself with irritation at somebody else, you have no idea what they're really trying to teach that person. Just because you felt like they should be learning the same thing you're learning in the same moment." And he looked at me and he blinked. He said, "But you just taught us this." I said, "I taught an open-ended lesson so that everybody could learn and be in a place inside themselves to receive from whatever the Most High wanted to write on the heart. If it was in agreement with what I was teaching, if it segued from there, if they heard something else and learned something else, well, then later on, as the Most High gives them clarification, they can share it with us and we can be better for it." And it wasn't 2 hours later that same day where his wife, who was new to Torah study, new to Torah observance, she was condemning herself and her husband, saying the things that they were still involved in, when all of a sudden the Most High touched her, and all of a sudden she had so much kindness and mercy and compassion and love and joy, just like a waterfall and a geyser both at the same time. She couldn't shut it off, and she was happy and she was crying and she was laughing, and she just started getting up and throwing her arms around. Next thing you know, she was dancing, and she grabbed her husband, and when she touched him, he just got full of life too. And it was just a wonderful little amazing thing to see of how the Most High could move in a moment. And everything that they've been feeling previous to that just evaporated with all the fruit of the Spirit they were showing. I'm not saying that's necessary for everybody. It was just that particular moment. There was enough fruit of the Spirit that he forgot what he was irritated about. So I know if we humble ourselves before him and we ask him for the humility to where we can be humbled before him, because when you got a big ego and you got a lot of pride, you got a lot of ultra amounts of self-confidence, and you know you've been doing this stuff for so long and you know how well you can do it, you don't leave much room for him to work through you. At one point, I was involved in a prison ministry, and I didn't have a vehicle at the time, and so Hannah was my transportation that day, and she went with me to a prison, and she went inside with me completely against her will. I'll let her tell that story from her perspective, but the fellows that we went to see were not the ones we had to pray for the most. It was the receptionist, and it was the guards, and the place and walk in that place and blessing the Most High in His name was the most important reason I was there that day. You never know. The people I was there to teach were completely unreceptive. And they
Unreceptive.
asked me, sir,
Did you say they were receptive or unreceptive? I didn't catch that.
completely unreceptive.
Oh my.
But that's okay. As long as the Most High has His way, it's not up to me how He does it. I just know He's got to keep His word in doing it. A fellow asked me for a paper through the prison chaplaincy to give a recommendation to him, and I told him I was unable to do that. He got so irate and so volatile, I thought he was going to hemorrhage on the spot. And the other fellow's hostility was so obvious. Hannah got so afraid, I thought she was going to pass out from it. Here we are, locked inside this cafeteria, locked in there with these inmates, and we can't get out, and we're locked in there with them, and she's looking around, but she tells the tale much better than me. And she said when we left, don't you ever ask me to take you to another prison. I said, not unless the Most High tells me to. And then she goes, just like she was on the script for Charlie Brown. And I said, you don't have to worry. I was with you. And beyond that, the Most High was with us. We were safe. You just didn't realize it at the time. But she was still saying, no more. So there's not a circumstance that the Most High is unable to change. There's nothing too hard for Him to do. There's nothing impossible for Him to accomplish. Okay, that being said, we can be our own worst enemies by how we limit Him and what He'll do in our life and through us, and how we limit ourselves and how we limit others by virtue of the limitations we put on ourselves, what we expect and what we don't expect, what we'll accept and won't accept. Because He says all things are possible with Him. That means whatever limitation we put on it, we've gone contrary to Him already.
Yep.
So, if you can be in the moment with the Most High, and you can be humble enough to receive whatever it is He wants to work through you in that moment, it's not going to get much better than that moment to moment. It'll just decrease our set apartness, increase how you're being redeemed, and you'll be so full of the truth, you'll be gurgling all the way. So, I guess it's back to you, Michael. Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem.
That way.